Today we're joined by bassist and composer Luke Sellick, a cornerstone of the New York City jazz scene and collaborator with legends like Monty Alexander, Benny Golson, and Russell Malone. Hailing from Winnipeg, Canada, Luke's journey includes mentorship under Ron Carter at Juilliard and performances at iconic venues like Smoke and Smalls. With albums like Discovery and his duo project Small Vacation, Luke blends tradition with innovation. Beyond the stage, he's passionate educator, outdoorsman, and advocate for the music's power to inspire. So, Luke, good to see you. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Abraham. This will be fun. Thanks.
Yeah, awesome. So, let's I wanted to talk with you first about, Benny Golson because, the master musician, the master composer, you got a chance to work with him and unfortunately he passed not so long ago, rest his soul. So, could you talk a little bit about your experience working with him, any special moments or anything you really a lesson you took from him that you still carry with you today?
Yeah, I mean, I just think he's such an inspiring person. I just feel so honored that I got to meet him and play with him. It was a huge blessing in my life. I remember when I got the call from him, I think I just landed on a plane in Portland, Oregon on tour, and I just like listened to my voicemail on my iPhone. It's like, this is Benny Golson. Would you like to come to Tokyo with me? And I was just like, wow, because you know, to me, like, I don't know, this is kind of what tell people, but like growing up in Canada where I'm from, you go to the library and you get albums of different musicians as a teenager, as a kid. And to me, like, I love jazz, but someone like Benny Golson seemed like as far away from my life as someone like Beethoven or something, it's like just someone who's in like the names of all time. So you just didn't I was never expecting that I would meet someone like that, let alone get a call to play in his band. So that was so awesome. And then I don't know, one of the stories that I think is funny that I like to share too is because mean, he was always so respectful. Would call you and just be so generous and so kind. And um, he called me and said, I'd like to do some of my original compositions, my own songs, but I'll have charts for all of them. Um, and so I just thought it was so funny because I went to Juilliard and in music school, like part of like the assigned curriculum, like you had to, like everybody knows these songs like Stablemates or Whisper Not. It's like if you don't know that or Killer Joe, if you don't know that, you're kind of like you're not really on the scene at all. But then I get the gig with him, like, because it was kind of funny. Like, you're expected to know that to just be a general jazz musician. And then I'm actually playing with the guy, and he's like, oh, this is my original sign. He had actually printed out like real book lead sheets of these songs as if I had never seen them before. And it's like, Mr. Golson, I'm pretty sure every musician knows all these songs, but thanks for the charts anyway. So I thought that was kind of funny, almost like the humility of him being not assuming, like,
Did
just
you get
because
to
he's
pl
who he is,
Did you
that we
get to
would
play
know
the
that.
cool one with him? There's this one song he recorded with Art Farmer. I don't know if did you ever get to play that song with him
I
by any
don't think so.
chance?
Can you sing it? So, do you remember it?
It's like da 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 da. What's it called? It's like four bars of B flat minor seven over an E, and then another
I,
four
I
bars.
don't I don't think we did that one. No.
Yeah.
So I should know that one, but yeah, I'm trying to remember some of the songs we did every time. He would have one Horizon Ahead, which I always enjoyed playing. That was one of his newer ones. But then yeah, we do the classics, Whisper Not and Blues March. And so to me, to play that kind of stuff with a composer, it's just like an unbelievable experience, because I don't think here's me from Canada, like connected right to the source of jazz in a way.
When you got the phone call from him, was it like was it almost surreal in a sense? Like you're
Oh yeah.
did you I mean like you're like oh, like is this happening right now? Like I mean because it's one thing to get a call from someone, maybe around your same age that you respect and look up to, but you're talking about a master, someone who innovated the music. It's got to feel surreal.
Totally. And that's also how I felt when I started studying with Ron Carter too, because, growing up as a bass player, he was kind of one of the top three guys that I was probably checking out. So I just remember like spending hours just like trying to zoom in on the YouTube video to see like what he was doing with his hands and how his right hand looked and stuff. And like, oh man, I wish, the cameraman had held that for a second longer. And then next thing you know, like I'm in his house and it's like, oh, I could just look at him playing the bass right in front of me. Like this sound that I've heard my whole life is actually happening in the room with me. That was totally surreal. I was like, wow, it's really him. It really sounds like him, you know? And I was in the room, you know, there's something so amazing about being in the room with someone like that and hearing that sound in person, you know?
Would you pick his brain about little things on certain recordings that you were, really inspired by, and just these like maybe, like I'm sure there's like little things you could kind of pick apart from his playing on certain tracks.
You know, you could do that, but I would say that I did that type of study on my own before I started studying with him. But then when I started studying with him, that I realized that wasn't what he was interested in talking about, you know, and he probably wouldn't even remember a lot of these recordings. And yeah, because yeah, it's interesting because I think growing up in music school and studying the people I studied, you kind of I was at a certain time I was really into you know, oh, what's it like with this drummer or this thing or like what are you playing on this chord? And then it's interesting meeting the person and realizing that your thought process was in analyzing what they were doing had nothing to do with the thought process that they had in making the thing. You know, what I was focusing on at those times, trying to pick it apart and how do you do this, was not what he was focusing on when he was playing it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I had to make a shift there, and you know, I definitely he taught me the things that he was interested in teaching me, which
Well,
was so much better.
it's
Yeah,
interesting you say that because one of the great Pat Martino quotes is that when he would, when he was with John Coltrane or with Dennis Sandoli, like who he studied with, he said, I didn't study there. I studied the person. So it's, on a similar, almost runs parallel to the things that you're talking about.
yeah. There's definitely certain things that when you meet the person, like with Ron Carter, for example, that makes a lot of sense why they're so successful. You
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
attention to detail and just the attitude and the just the high standard that he had. You wouldn't know necessarily that he's like that just from hearing him play, but just like that intensity and the passion that he has for what he does is one of the things that rubbed off on me the most.
No, that's beautiful to hear. I mean, it's such a privileged position to be able to study with him. Let's talk a little bit about some recent performances, if that's okay.
Sure.
There's there's nights that feel like magic. There are nights there where it's solid. Has there any been like in the last year any performances that felt extra special to you? Could you talk about that? Maybe what made them special, maybe where it was, or who it was with, or just the energy, something like that. What stands out?
Well, that's something that I think about a lot. That's something that I would like to understand better because there are those performances, you know, there's performances that you play well and you have fun and you do a good job and you, you know, hopefully you're prepared all the time, but then there's ones where it just goes to a completely other level. And that's something that I'm like praying about. Like, I want to know what are the things that go into, you know, because when those, yeah, I have those. How is this happening right now? How are we all on the same page? How are we flying to the next level right here in terms of our flow with one another, in terms of just the love and the power that's coming from the band because I still don't know exactly what those things are because I've been in a situation with the same group, you know, in a great venue, you know, even in the same venue on multiple nights. And one night it just goes to the stratosphere, and another night it just kind of plateaus. And so, yeah, that is one of the mysteries of music to me. Like, why is that? And I'm starting to realize that there's so, yeah, a lot more factors than, um, I even, you know, ever thought before. I've started to realize it has to do with who's in the audience, I think, you know, and what kind of attitude that they're bringing. You know, it has to do with who's helping you with the sound and what kind of attitude they're bringing. It has to do with, you know, I guess your day and your relationship with the people that you're playing with. I think relationships are really important. It's something that I'm learning more, like the love between band members or the
Yeah, no malice on the bandstand, right?
yeah, although I mean, I've definitely been in situations too where there was malice and it kind of turned out to be add to the intensity or add to the drama, but I personally don't enjoy that. So for me, you know, the relationships between band members is super important.
I mean, I definitely agree with you. I was actually talking to my friend about this, a great pianist, and he said, like you're talking about those nights are magic, but some of them aren't. But that's why we go back the next day because we want to feel that magic again.
Totally. Yeah. And it's frustrating that you can't control it necessarily. Like you can control your own attitude, you can control your own preparation up to a certain point, but then after that, it just seems like there's certain things that are out of your hands. But that's something that this year I'm thinking like I would just like to learn what are some of the key ingredients that I could just make it at least, go from 50% of the time to 75% of the time, you know?
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And now we're talking about performing, and you've gotten to work with so many great people. And have you ever worked with somebody where they're playing, how do I put this? Their playing changed the way you play, shifted your concept of, whether it's time or just the notes you play, like someone who really took you outside of yourself in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, the first major gig that I had when I moved to New York, and then I went to Juilliard, and as I was getting out of school, I got the gig with Johnny O'Neill. So
Hmm.
he's like not necessarily as well known worldwide as some, but he in New York, everybody knows him, and he's
Oh
a
yeah, my
singer.
friend used to play bass with him also, so
Oh,
yeah,
okay, yeah, no, he's a singer, and so we played 3 or 4 nights a week, singer and piano player, and we just played so much together, and he kind of taught me it because um, one thing about jazz is that there's an intangible aspect to it that couldn't be written down and that couldn't be spoken in words, but that's passed on through um, a feeling, right? There's the feeling of jazz that people talk about, and that has to do with the blues, that has to do with rhythm and swing. And I think it goes beyond that too. And it's one of those things that you can't necessarily put into words. And that's why people want to move to New York. That's why I wanted to move to New York. I was like, I like this feeling of how these people play jazz and how these people play music. And I know I don't have it as of now, so I need to get around it because it's an impartation. It's not like something that you could just study out of a book or something like that. So that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to be around Johnny is because he carries that kind of sound, that kind of feeling in his playing, that swing, that just, that the just playing 12 bars of blues of us just swinging without doing anything else. That brings the joy. That makes you happy, just the way that it feels. You don't have to do anything slick. You don't have to add anything extra. You don't have to do anything virtuosic. Just the feeling of it all of a sudden puts a smile on your face, and so that's kind of what I got from him. So that totally changed the way I play and changed the way I think about music. And yeah, a lot has changed in the way I think about music and time, and I think a key ingredient is that it's uh, joy, like that you just get a joy, you just get a happy feeling just from the way that the beat feels, just from the way that the beat sounds, and just from playing that beat together with
No,
you
I
and the
mean,
drums.
I
Yeah.
understand completely. Mike, friends ask me, non-musicians or even musicians, they're like, "Why do you play this music?" Like, I get it, you improvise, but I'm like, it just feels good. It feels good to do it. Like, I don't know what else to tell you other than
When it's going right, it sure does, Also feel painful when it's
sure.
when you know what it's supposed to feel like and it's not there, so it's yeah, it's exactly what you're saying, just trying to get to that every night. But for me, like Johnny O'Neill was one person that totally changed.
No,
And then
that
he also, yeah, he just changed the way that I think about songs and stuff because it's not like because you growing up, in music school, you think about the changes as being like a fixed thing, but really harmony is being such a flexible and negotiable thing. Is there's just so many ways to go through a song and make it feel different. And so that to me, that's another thing that's fun about playing bass is that a melody can be a melody that's sung the same different way, but I could just choose a different note and just totally change the feeling of that melody. And so for me, that's something I love about bass.
No, this is great stuff, Luke. Before I, ask someone if if we can do an interview, I kind of do my due diligence. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was I saw this video of you playing John Coltrane's Melody and a Soul and that, the untitled one with the
Oh
number.
yeah, the
Yeah,
transcription that I put up, yeah.
exactly. So, I did a similar transcription, not the same song, but like this, one of his tunes. And after I did it, it took a while, but like after I did it, it made me realize not even more of a genius what John Coltrane was. I always knew he was a genius, but it almost took it to another level, almost left me feeling a little bit more confused. So, I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but can you talk about maybe the way you looked at at the bass or just looked at soloing when you did that transcription? Because to play that on the bass has got to be very challenging. You want to articulate like a saxophone sort of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, man, there's so many people that have gone way deeper with than I have when it comes to someone like Coltrane, but I just love the feeling that I get from his playing. It has to do with, I mean, that solo, it has to do with that sus sound and that sound of those like, you know, that sus triad, like B flat, E flat, F, and just I don't I'm sure I think he talked about that. It's kind of like a trinity of three notes, just that three note cell. So to me that's so interesting, like what you can do with a small little three note cell like that pentatonic sound, and what, that's just so baked into our just how we hear music just through all cultures is the pentatonic and that minor blues thing. And so yeah, for me with transcriptions, like I used to do the whole, memorize the whole solo, but for me now it's more like, okay, there's an essence of what he's doing here that I want to get
It
into my
sounded
playing.
really cool on the bass.
Yeah, so how can what is the essence of what he's doing that I'm liking from that sound, and how do I get it in? So for students, like I say now, don't but I don't burden my students with memorizing whole solos, but like what is this little cell, thing that's good, and then how can you immediately begin to build it into your sound and what you do. And with Coltrane, that one of the big things is the rhythm that is so awesome, and how he does these little 3-4 note cells, and uses these simple ideas, but then just builds on top of each other. So that, I mean, that's stuff that I would like to practice more and get more into my playing. But I love that solo on that Untitled original that came out a few years ago. Something about it's just so euphoric to me.
Oh yeah, it's a great track to and so playing soprano saxophone, it's just really
Yeah, it
great.
has that spiritual quality to it that I like in music. Yeah.
Definitely his music was certainly spiritual. I think that so for certainly. Luke, one of the questions I like to ask people on the podcast is about the life of a jazz musician. There's a lot of mystery about this life, not even just for people looking outside at us, who don't play, but younger jazz musicians. Is there a common misconception about being a jazz musician that you wish more people understood? Something you feel strongly about? Like, I wish more people, understood this, that this is what it is, or something like that.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think one thing that I felt when I was moving to New York was like I had this kind of hardcore attitude that I had inherited just from being around certain people that had this like, if I'm not, making 100% of my living as a musician, then I'm not really doing it. Like, oh, you got to really go all in and all this stuff. And so I definitely did that, and do make my living as a musician now, but I think I've kind of come off that hardcore attitude a little bit, and I'm like, there's just so many different ways to do it. So many
Wait, when
different
did you when did you when did you come to New York and what year?
2012.
Okay, so so I don't know if did you ever play at the place Garage by any chance?
Oh man, yeah, one of my first gigs was at the
Yeah, and
garage.
I was like,
Yeah.
I did the math. I'm like, if you got, they didn't pay anything, but I'm like, if you did the math, like, if you played there like every day, like, and that, like, you'd still be in like, how would you survive? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, but one thing that I think that musicians need to change is just like that when you're always having the attitude, oh, it's so rough to be a jazz musician, it's going to be so hard, it's going to be so brutal. That's not necessarily true. I find it to be a blessing. I make my living playing music. It's fun. I think if you have that attitude, oh, it's going to just suck, it's going to be a grind, I'm never going to get ahead in life, then that's probably what's going to happen to you. But if you're, I'm just at this point just so thankful for the opportunities to play, for the opportunities to make a living playing music. You know what? There are people that love. There is a, if you have a gift and you want to go for it, I really don't think that there's any reason not to. Like I don't know. Hear people say it's just going to be too hard. You know what? Like it's possible. There's a path for everybody. If you find out what your gifting is and you go for it, there's a way to make a great
Oh
living
yeah,
doing.
and it could take decades sometime, and that's fine. It's nothing
It
wrong
takes
with it.
creativity. It takes kind of finding your niche and finding your people, but you know what? You will. And yeah, so I've been super blessed making a career in music, and it's always changing. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like 5 years from now, but it's been a wild ride. I've loved it.
No,
Yeah.
you sound very grateful to be doing what you're doing, and I think that's people people definitely look for that quality in bass players because there's the supportive role in the band. They need to feel that, you know, th- that what you're talking about, that grateful and they want to give it back to the band or something like
Yeah,
that.
well, thankfulness is just a really, for me, I've just realized it's a very important ingredient in life in general. But, because especially with jazz musicians, we have to be careful because there's a lot of vibing or a lot of darkness that can happen and, or a lot of jadedness towards the scene. Oh man, just people complain like a complaining attitude or a grumpy attitude, and I've gotten caught up in that over the years just because people talk in that way, and I've just realized, that just leads to more darkness. That's a never-ending spiral downwards. But really, we're making a living playing music. I'm playing music every day that I love and I care about. I'm making art. And so just the more that you can foster that thankful attitude, I mean, that changes everything, Just to even be like, even if it's a rough gig, wow, I'm still making music and getting paid for it. What a blessing.
Oh yeah, and I mean, to be able to, to be able to move on from those bad gigs and almost now you look at it like, it's over, and maybe have a little sense of humor about it instead of just saying, oh, and getting mad about it.
Yeah, I mean that comes with experience too, because I used to just be like, after a bad gig, I used to just be like, want to crawl in a hole, just because like, man, I spent my whole life pursuing this and I suck at it, and then, but with time you realize, you know what? Yeah. First of all, if it went all bad, it wasn't necessarily all, that's not, doesn't reflect on who I am as a person or a musician. And so, yeah, with experience and time, because yeah, we've all gone through some dark phases like that for sure.
No, absolutely. This is you're saying a lot of things. I'm definitely going to think about some of the things you're saying as well. Let's go. This music has such history. We don't need to even go into that. It's an entirely different conversation. But let's say you're the musician you are today, and you got to go back to the 1950s or 60s, something like that. Who would you have wanted to work with? Either you could have hired them, or you could have been the bass player in their band. You ever think about that?
I haven't, but let's think about it right now. I mean, to me, Ahmad Jamal is one of my most absolute favorites, and I work with Monty Alexander right now, and it's by far the most fun I've ever had playing music. But he's so is influenced by Ahmad, and I just think Ahmad Jamal, his concept is so awesome. His sound is so awesome. I would like to hear what John Coltrane would sound like to be in the room live and to experience that, just that energy and that feeling. Um, that would be awesome too. Man, there's a lot. I mean, I love Elvin Jones. I would love to have played a few choruses with him.
Everyone I talk to on this podcast, whether guitar players or piano, everyone wants to have played with Elvin.
Really?
Yeah, well, I would say it's probably 75% of the answers are Elvin. So that's very interesting.
That is pretty interesting. Um, hmm, Let me think. What would be one other one? I would love to have been the bass player on Aretha Franklin live at the Fillmore. That
Oh
would have been
man,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah. So Luke, we talked about being grateful, and you're talking about this attitude is such an important part to have as part of who you are as a musician. Is that what success is to you? That you that this is what you're playing the music and sharing the music you love every day, and that's your job? Is that the definition of success for you, or does it have to do with maybe like we talked about Benny, like having those things that you've just had in your life happen as well?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I guess music fits into a larger thing, which is your life in general. So how does the music fit in your life? I think for me, I certainly had certain goals of this was what success would look like for me in jazz, to play at the Vanguard or something like that. And then those things happened and it was great, but it was like definitely wasn't an ultimate fulfillment or an ultimate success. So, I think one thing for me that success looks like is just a constantly growing and changing,
Yeah, the journey.
yeah, I think it's in the journey and it's in finding out what it is. Like the first time I played bass with another person was when I was about 13 or 12 or something like that. So I
Upright or electric?
upright, yeah, I'd taken lessons for about um, a year and I had memorized like one 12-bar blues bass line. And then a guy came over to our house who knew how to like play some boogie woogie piano to go along with that. And because I had been having fun learning it on my own, but then when that guy started playing and I felt it come together with what I was doing, this joy hit my heart. And I just remember as a kid, like this thing kind of rose up on the inside of me like, yes, this is what I want to do. So it's kind of like there's a something that God put inside of me or inside of every person where it's just like when you start touching on that, which I did in that moment, something came alive and it was like a joy and it was just like I don't know. I talked to my students about this. Like that's like a signpost almost that's like, hey, you're on the right track, to your destiny or to what you have in your heart coming out. So like, how do I continue to pursue, that what is on the inside of me to come out in a creative way, in a way that, is authentic to who I am as a musician. And so that's something that's always changing. And I've even noticed that for me recently too, because like, it always has to change because sometimes I've just been doing the same thing for years because it's like, oh, I've always done this gig. I've always liked this gig. Yes, it was part of the journey. It was part of the route, but like it had life at a certain point. But now that the flow is somewhere else and I'm stuck here, where is it going? Where do I need to go now? Where I need to grow into now? So I think, yeah, I think what you said about it being a journey,
Oh yeah, because I
and
remember
yeah,
you said like you talked about the Vanguard. I mean, I remember like the first time I played it like with my band at like the Iridium or the Blue Note. I'm like, man, I thought looking at the future self, I'm gonna have some sense of like completion or something, but it was a moment in time, and then it was on to the next day, and that's like
yeah,
that for everything. It doesn't matter what it is.
yeah. I mean,
It's the
it's nice to
journey.
have that validation in a way, but it's kind of better to you know, have just played uh just authentically from the heart for two people in nowhere, in a way, like rather than being at some high profile venue
No, I
just
think you're totally
that.
right. I
Yeah.
think you're totally right. No, Luke, this has been great. I really want to thank you for your time, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to gain some insight on the things you've had to say. Where can everybody find you in terms of your website, social media, where you want to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on getting better at all that stuff. So it's my name is Luke Luke Sellick Sellick. So at LD Sellick is my Instagram. My website is just my name, lukesellick.com. And people can email me or get a hold of me there. I do teach lessons and stuff like that. And yep, play around the world. So hopefully wherever someone's listening to this, be coming near you. Hopefully meet some new people through this. Always looking to you know, connect with people around the world. So yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.